This is a true horrifying story of a real devil's game. We've all heard about games such as the Ouija board, the coroner's game, the elevator game, and much more. From a religious perspective, these are not games. They are rituals or sihr that summon jinns. There's a game, or more like a ritual, called Charlie Charlie. It may be as dangerous or even more dangerous than the Ouija board. Charlie Charlie involves a board or a paper and two pencils. Two no's, two yeses, and two pencils balanced on top of each other intersecting. Back in 2015, the Charlie Charlie game was a trend on Vine. Users would play this game and post their reactions. Now, most of them were setups, they were fake. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the game doesn't work, because some of the vines were real. The game requires a spoken ritual and of course a welcome call to summon a jinn. I don't want to show you the details on how to start playing the game, but I will show you a clip of how this ritual looks like when a jinn is playing with you. Warning, I'm about to show you real footage of someone playing this game.
Charlie Charlie, are you here? Oh yeah, right. Charlie Charlie, are you going to leave? Charlie Charlie, can you leave? Charlie Charlie, can I go? Charlie Charlie, are you going to hurt me?
Just like the Ouija board, there's no life inside that block of wood. There's no life inside this piece of paper. These games are just tools for the paranormal beings to speak with you. Things may go very wrong if these beings felt intimidated. Many of you don't understand how powerful jinns can be. Now, of course, setting this up and just chanting Charlie Charlie will not make this game work. But regardless, even if you were taught how to play, stay away from such games. You do not want to tie yourself around a being you cannot see. This is a true horrifying story of the game Red Door, Yellow Door. This game is pretty simple. You lay down and your partner chants red door, yellow door, any other color door until you enter a trance state. You will see two doors. You pick one door. Behind every door there is a room, and in every room there are two doors. And the cycle keeps going. All of these paranormal games have origins or a history of how these games started. However, researchers were unable to find any origins of the game Red Door, Yellow Door. This game has several names, such as Black Door, White Door, but one of the names is called The Doors of Your Mind. The difference between both is The Doors of Your Mind is not a game. It is more of a spiritual ritual where you lay down in a dark room, light up candles, and you know what may happen next. Red Door, Yellow Door is just a children's variant of The Doors of Your Mind. However, they both kind of work the same with minor differences. But what are the dangers behind this game? This game plays with hypnosis, which is incredibly dangerous. It is very possible for a player to go into an actual trance state, at which point he or she is under hypnosis, being guided by someone who knows nothing about hypnosis. That's the psychological side of the game. But religiously, if things went wrong during the game, you may cause severe spiritual damage. Oh, fun fact, jinns can easily enter a person's thoughts. Jinns can manipulate your exploration during your trance state. That is why one of the main warnings behind this game is, if you see people behind these doors, avoid talking to them, because that may not be your imagination. And to prove this fact, one of the most common ways jinns get into someone's head is during hypnagogia. Hypnagogia is the transitional state of consciousness between wakefulness and sleep. And in this game, you may feel very uncomfortable during your hypnagogic state, Warning, I'm about to show you a video of a person who went through this state by playing this game, and it did not end very well. This is a true horrifying story of the witch in Jeddah. This story was submitted by Iffet, a Saudi Arabian girl that narrated her aunt's story. The aunt's name is Noura. Noura was in her 20s when she recently got married back in 2003. She had a newborn baby at the time, so she needed help in the house. She hired a nanny from Indonesia that was previously fired from another house in Riyadh. This all started from day one. This Indonesian nanny would help Noura around the house with carrying furniture. She was very petite, but she had the power to lift heavy objects like it was paper. She would also cook food on such a fast pace. It was just not ordinary. And she would spend 4 to 5 hours daily in the guest toilet downstairs. Noura had no idea what was going on. One night, Noura was awakened by loud noises coming from one of the bedrooms late at night. She walked towards the room and had a peek, and she saw something that was terrifying. It was the nanny in the dark, wearing a white mask on her face, chanting gibberish. She saw Noura and she immediately jumped in her bed. The next day, they sent her out to buy some groceries. And while she was out, Noura goes inside her bedroom and inspects her belongings, as she was very suspicious. She found bags of strange leaves. She found reptile skin, fingernails, bags of hair strands, pictures of the Saudi Arabian family she worked for, with holes punched through the faces, and a voodoo doll. Noura and her husband contacted the authorities, and they had to act like they didn't see anything. They wanted her paperwork to be prepared for her to leave the country, because if she found out that they know, she will harm them. They eventually tricked her and had her put on a plane with her ritual belongings left in the house. Days later, Noura finds out that this woman also attempted to harm them. She slowly started finding pieces of black magic rituals buried inside and around the house. In the following weeks, they had a sheikh come over and cleanse the house. But what do you think would have happened if she wasn't caught? This is a true horrifying story of a viewer that saw one of my videos and did not take my warning seriously. A TikToker by the name Ali watched the TikTok series that warns viewers about one of the world's most dangerous books, Shams al-Ma'arif. Ali was able to get his hands on an original copy of this book. He disregarded the warnings and he read a small section of the book. This is a quick recap on what this book really is. I posted a few videos explaining the dangers behind this book. One of the parts is part 25. This book was written in Arabic around 800 years ago by an author named Ahmed al-Buni. The book carries black magic rituals that are so dangerous, most of them are not even being performed today. This book was lost and forgotten for all those years, and I spoke about it for the first time in many years. The 3 videos totaled to 13 million views, and some of the viewers ignored the warning. They took the risk and they read the book. Ali is one of them. These are the symptoms Ali faced after reading the book. He read a very small section and he had the Quran playing in his home, and then he heard sudden knocking sounds. He felt something touching his legs, and he claimed that listening to the Quran was not helping his situation. Hours later, he was not able to get up and pray, but he eventually fought the pain. Now, he released 19 videos warning viewers not to read it, and he coded, "You will regret reading this book. He also posted a video of himself dancing and shaking his feet, but he swears to God that this was not him dancing. On day 2, Ali was shivering all day and he was still unable to fight his inner demons. In a lot of his videos, I was tagged by my followers asking me to help the brother out. But you see, this is why I told you to stay away, and you decided not to listen. I explained the consequences and how some things cannot be undone. Only the people who associate with jinns are safe to read this book. You and I, we're not invited. Countless of people have suffered from demonic possession for many years after committing such mistakes. If you're really interested in magic, go read some Harry Potter books, bro. But stay away from this one, because this book can kill you. This is a true horrifying story of the cab driver in Jordan. This story took place around 1991 or 1992. Yusuf, a Jordanian cab driver, was driving around an old village at night. He was on his way home, about to end his shift. On his way, he sees a young 19-20-year-old girl that was struggling to get a ride. He pulled up next to her, and she seemed very shocked that he saw her and tried to help out. She hops in the car and she asks him to take her home. She leads the way and they finally reach. She thanked him and she hopped out the car. She gets closer to her house and she just stares at it. He noticed what she was doing, so he rolls down the window and he shouts, "Hey, get inside your house." She turns her head, smiles at him, and starts walking towards her door. Yusuf's house was around a 40-minute drive from that area. He starts driving back home, and 30 minutes in through the drive, he looks at the back of the car and he notices a handbag. The girl that hopped in forgot her bag. He rolls his eyes and turns around because the drive back to her house is going to take another 30 minutes. He reaches the same house. It was very dark. There were no lights. He knocks on the door. He rings the bell. The bell does not work. He gives up and he decides to come back in daylight. Yusuf wakes up the next morning and immediately goes to this girl's house with her handbag. He knocks and knocks for several minutes. Nobody answers the door. A bunch of guys walk past him and start laughing at him. He turns around and asks about what's going on. They tell him, "You're knocking on a house that's been empty and abandoned for 15 years. Yusuf says, "It can't be. I dropped a girl here last night and she forgot this handbag." They ask Yusuf to describe how she looks like, and he did. The guys started to look extremely uncomfortable. They told him that the girl he described was an actual resident in this house. This girl and her whole family died many years ago in an unexplainable death. And the handbag that you're carrying right now is hers. A stolen, lost handbag. It contained all her items, her documents, her papers. Her relatives and the authorities were looking for this handbag for many, many years. But who was the girl that hopped in the car? This is a true horrifying story, part 45. The Exorcist, a film that is based on a true story. Back then, it was rated as the scariest movie that has ever been screened. The story of this movie is based on a powerful jinn that possessed a little girl, and the local priests were not able to cure the girl. A few characters were killed by the demon in the film, and eventually they got help from experts that had to travel to perform an exorcism on the girl. So that's the story of the movie. But what were the horrifying incidents that happened behind the scenes? The director, William Friedkin, saw a pigeon fly into the circuit box. The entire set was destroyed and burned down. Many of the actors were injured during scenes, and they had to perform a blessing every single day to ensure safety on everyone on set. They knew that they were not supposed to turn this girl's story into a movie, but they did anyways. There were reports by the Washington Post in early 1974 of many heart attacks around the world, spiking whenever the film premiered. And there were lightning bolts targeting a screening in Italy, in an attempt by who knows what to stop the movie from screening. All the characters that lost their lives in the movie have lost their lives in real life. This movie has killed many of its cast and staff associated behind its production. Among them are two actors, Jack McGowan and Vasiliki Maliaros. They both died before the film was released. Not only 9 staff members have died during the production, but more than 10 relatives of other producers have died before and after the movie was released. But why though? Looking at it from an Islamic perspective, why all these deaths? Jinns don't like their stories to be told. Jinns usually keep what they know to themselves. That is why many of the jinn storytellers can talk online to an extent and cannot go beyond. If we talk about research only jinns and black magicians know about, we may get hurt. I'm not saying that jinns have more knowledge than us, but they know things that we do not know. And the knowledge that comes from jinns always costs a price. The jinns were not happy that their story was told. The producers of this movie were not permitted to tell their story, and therefore sets were burned down, the actors got injured, and people's lives were taken. This is a true horrifying story of a man who read the book Shams al-Ma'arif. For those who don't know what this book is, please refer to part 25. It is the second pinned video on my page. Shams al-Ma'arif is one of the world's most dangerous books. It carries one of the most dangerous rituals of summoning demons. Stay away from this book if you ever see it. This story took place in Egypt about 2 years ago. I don't know much about this book, but after I heard the story, I discovered some extra information of what this book contains. There are a couple of pages, around 4 or 5 pages inside this book, somewhere in the middle. They contain names of jinns. Part of the ritual is reading all these names, and one of the jinns on these pages will be summoned. A man in Egypt got this book from an old friend. His friend warned him many times about reading the book, but he insisted. Before the owner gave him the book, he ripped out these 4 or 5 pages that contain the names of the jinns. Because out of all rituals in the book, that one specifically is the most dangerous one. He rips the pages out and hands him the book. That friend takes the book back home and starts reading it. As he reads the book, strange things would happen. He would hear knocks inside his house. Small things would light up on fire, and the tap water would run in the toilets. He knew such things would happen. He ignored everything and continues reading the book. All of a sudden, someone outside rings the doorbell. His whole body froze from fear. He opens the door and sees a short, old man. He looked very unusual. His feet were abnormally big. The skin on his face seemed like it was rubber, and his hands were as dry as a rock. The old man looks at him and says, "Stop reading the book." And then he left. Ever since that day, wherever this guy goes, he would see that old man everywhere. At the supermarket, at the gas stations, outside mosques, in his neighborhood. This guy decided to give the book back to his friend. When he gave the book back to the real owner, the owner immediately turns to the pages that he ripped out before handing him the book. And he witnessed something terrifying. The pages that were ripped out were stitched back inside the book. He quickly asked him if he reached and read those pages. He said yes. Ever since I read this chapter, this old man has been following me everywhere. This is a true horrifying story of the Illuminati. The Illuminati is real. It is a real society that aims for world order. Their intent is world domination. They are also behind some of history's greatest revolutions and assassinations. They existed since the 18th century, and since then, they were always known for influencing political decisions. People confuse the Illuminati with the Freemasons. The Freemasons aren't exactly the Illuminati. The Freemasons evolved out of stonemasons and builders. The Illuminati recruited many Freemasons because they're known to be people with knowledge. There are ranks in the Freemasons. The higher you rank, the more privileged you get. Anybody who is a valuable asset for the Illuminati will have all their wishes granted, whether it was fame, money, or even both. And if you cross them, they will kill you. There are freaky videos on the deep web. These videos were posted on Twitter and YouTube, but they were removed very quick, where hidden cameras were snuck into many of their ritual events. Of course, invites only. The most famous influencers and artists were present at these events, and they would have the freakiest performances. In Islam, without a doubt, the three parties, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, and the New World Order, are all linked, and they associate, for one thing, the arrival of the Dajjal. There is no question about that. Muslims have been warned through the Ahadith that a society will deceive nations across the globe, and they will be so powerful, they pretty much own the world. Ask yourself this: do you really think any organization in existence could be more powerful than any of these three parties? War does not require guns and missiles anymore. In the 21st century, war is way more complex than that. Influence is power, and they have that influence. We will definitely go through a world order. This will happen. The Dajjal has been appointed. Forget the jinn stories. If you were alive when this happens, it will be the most horrific thing you will ever go through. And we are weeks away from his arrival. This is a true horrifying story of the real Annabelle. We've all seen the Annabelle series of movies, such as The Conjuring, Annabelle, Annabelle Creation, and Annabelle Comes Home. The stars of these movies are Ed and Lorraine Warren, which are real people. Ed and Lorraine Warren are paranormal investigators. Ed died in 2006, and his wife Lorraine died in 2019. And boy, do they have the most haunted items in their home, which is now a museum for tourists around the globe. And guess what's inside this museum? The real Annabelle. Out of all four movies, the real story of the real-life Annabelle is the prequel, Annabelle Creation. This doll belonged to a child named Annabelle. She died in mid-1900s. Weeks after her death, the parents felt their daughter's spirit being present in their home by hearing her giggles and her footsteps running across the house. They were Catholics. In Islam, we don't believe in spirits being around us. In our religion, when a person dies, the spirit is taken to a different world that is not parallel with our dimension. The paranormal beings that live among us are jinns, and they deceive family members by taking form and using voices of their deceased relatives, making them think that they are the lost loved ones. And that is exactly what happened in Annabelle's home. A jinn haunted that family. It used the form of their daughter and her voice while giggling. They eventually allowed that spirit to possess the daughter's doll. Now in real life, the demon didn't possess the doll. That's just an ordinary doll made out of plastic and cotton. In reality, when they invited the jinn to possess the doll, the jinn actually was invited into their home, and it used the doll to haunt them. This is a true story. An American-based film showed us the truth. It's not really a spirit of a little girl. It's a demon, and it used the doll as a tool to haunt this family. But the question is, if jinns don't really possess dolls, is the Annabelle doll safe to own? No, it's not. Because the jinn tied its legacy to that doll, and whoever takes the doll, takes the jinn with it. This is a true horrifying story, part 54. This story was submitted to me by someone I know very well. I want to stay away from the real names of the people from this story. This story took place in Dubai a couple of years ago. There's an area in Dubai called Al-Rashidiyah. In that area, there used to be a center for Ruqya, which can also be called an exorcism center. There were many sheikhs there that used to treat people that were infected with black magic and also treat people that were possessed by jinns. This center was for charity. They took no fees to treat people. The narrator of the story, the person I know, he was just a volunteer in that center. He's not really experienced with severe cases. One day, they received a call from a family that had a very tough case. This special case needed its own appointment. Many exorcists were appointed for this specific session. It was a Palestinian man that was possessed by a jinn that was a ashiq. And this man was brought in speaking Urdu. For those who don't know, Urdu is not a common language to be spoken by Palestinians. Urdu is a language that is used in some parts in India and Pakistan. The man and his family were never taught nor spoke this language before. So the sheikhs immediately knew that the jinn that possessed that man was an Urdu speaker. They put him in a room and all he was doing was screaming words in Urdu. They started the ruqya session and it took 8 men to hold this man down on the chair. He was shouting and laughing the whole time, ridiculing the exorcists. It's a common behavior from jinns when they possess humans. He started mumbling words in Urdu that only one of the exorcists understood. I love this man. You are weak. He will not be back to this place again. Took them hours of suffering. This man was out of control. He was possessed by a power they have never witnessed before. After hours of suffering, he was released. And then they asked him if he remembers what happened. But the man didn't know where he was. They asked the family to come back for another session in a few days, but they never came back. They tried to reach out to that family, but no one knows what happened to them. That was the last time this man and his family were ever seen. This is a true horrifying story of Hamdan School in Uganda. This school is an Islamic boarding school for girls. It was donated by one of the royal family members of Dubai 22 years ago. This story was submitted by Afra. An Arabic girl back in 2009 was a student at this high school. She knew that the school was haunted and that there was a graveyard right behind the school. And she heard rumors of many incidents where girls were possessed by jinns. But everything else about the school seems fine, because it's one of the most successful Islamic boarding schools in that region. But that does not deny the fact that jinns may live inside the school. Afra experienced something, and being in her 30s today, this one incident will always haunt her. Afra had a mutual friend that was a student in that same school. She was regularly possessed by one jinn. Out of all the religious students, she was one of the very few that didn't really care about the Islamic education. She always used to party, drink, hangs out with guys, and the jinn that used to possess her was surprisingly a Muslim. He was just furious that she used to disobey her family and her religion. They brought her to one of the halls in the school and they started a ruqya session. Afra was there witnessing the whole thing. After many attempts of trying to make this jinn speak, he finally responded. I am possessing this girl because she disobeys. I will not leave until she changes. They were all shocked and they proceed with the recitation. The moment they stop, just for a few seconds, the possessed girl stares at Afra. Who is this girl? Why is she very quiet? She is very pretty, very nice, but I cannot go near her. Afra froze in her place. She felt numb all around and she was not able to move a single muscle. The Imam was intrigued, so he asks the jinn, why can't you go near her? What is stopping you? It was a back and forth questioning. The jinn kept saying, I can't. Why can't you? Until it responded. There is someone in front of her with light. What does that mean? They ask. There is someone in front of her with light. I can't go near her. They couldn't interpret what this was exactly. It could have been the veil of light from the Adhkar. But regardless, Afra will never forget the demon's eyes staring deep into her soul, wanting to possess her. This is a true horrifying story of the most haunted house in Libya, Hosh al-Sittin. Hosh means house and Sittin means 60. This house is known amongst the majority of Libyan people. It's been abandoned for many years and it's the only house in that whole deserted area, and it is infested with jinns. There are hundreds of stories about this abandoned house, and everyone that's been there experienced horrible things. There are stories about people that have spent nights inside this house and they died a few days later. Whatever entity lives inside that house does not want you in there, period. In haunted places, jinns don't usually intimidate their guests right away. But in this place, People have reported children and baby cries minutes after walking inside. Many years ago, there was a group of soldiers that temporarily camped behind the house for a few days. There was a military procedure going on in that area. They didn't look at the house, nor did they bother going anywhere near it. On the first day, late at night, the men started hearing screams of a little boy shouting for help inside that house. They were all terrified from the noises. They knew that there was no boy inside that house. That was a jinn. All of them came close and they flashed their torches at the house from a distance. But there was no sign of anyone inside. One of the soldiers ridiculed the situation and he goes inside. "See, there's nothing that can harm us," he said. Later on that night, the noises eventually stopped. A few weeks later, that same man was driving down the road of that house. It was dark and it was raining heavily outside. He sees a cat in the middle of the street and he swerves. The car immediately loses control and one of the axles breaks. The car wouldn't start. He didn't know where he was exactly. So he hops out the car and there it is. The house, Hosh al-Sittin, was right in front of him. He knew the close call of a fatal car crash could have been intentional. No one knows. Do they want him back inside? Or did they want to kill him because of what he did? This is a true horrifying story of what Jahannam really is. Jahannam is hellfire. It is a place of eternal punishment. It is believed amongst all religions. In some religions, like Christianity, hell is a spiritual dimension, so it's only the souls that are tortured in hell. But that's not really the case. Hellfire is a physical place. It does exist. It is a world, just like any other world. It has valleys, mountains, and canyons. But it's not only a world. This thing breathes, it roars, it speaks. Hellfire is a beast. Hellfire eats sinners for a living. The more you feed it, the hungrier it gets. It is so big, it is chained by 70,000 chains, and on each chain, there are 70,000 angels pulling it. I'm talking about 4.9 billion angels. Do you know how big an angel can be based on Islamic narrations? An angel can tip over a country with the tip of one of its wings. Imagine the size of an angel. Now imagine 4.9 billion of them just struggling to hold down hellfire. Hell has 7 gates, and the guardian angel of hellfire is Malik. Malik is the only angel that never smiled. Let me tell you how terrifying this place is. In hellfire, there are clouds of acid. People that enter are given clothing made from fire. The temperature in there are millions of kelvins. Nothing compared to the sun. People in hellfire are privileged in size. God makes them so big. One of their tooth will be the size of Mountain Uhud. Why are they so big, you ask? So they burn slower. You will hear disturbing sounds of screams from people in there. They will beg for food and water, and they will be told to go down to the bottom of hell to find the tree of Zaqum. Zaqum is a fruit made in hellfire. It is so hot, one narration says, if this fruit accidentally dropped on earth, it will burn down the whole globe. They will be given boiling water to drink. The water will be so hot, their faces would melt before they drink it. And if you decide not to drink nor eat, they will force feed you till you have a full stomach. Hellfire is also a place of ambush. There are other creatures in there that will attack you. I'll leave the rest for Mu'min Abu Mecca to explain. I'm not sure how other religions describe it, but in Islam, this is hellfire. And no one can sacrifice themselves for your sins. This is a true horrifying story of a haunted house in Jumeirah 1. This story was submitted by a family, a mom, a dad, and 3 daughters. The story happened in 2016. Jumeirah 1 is an old area in Dubai. Many houses there are old, though they are very expensive, since they're just a 5-minute walk from the beach. This family moved in a new house with a 1-year lease contract. After organizing furniture, they moved in and the 3 daughters picked the rooms they wanted. On the 3rd night, the youngest daughter, age 10, came to her sisters crying, saying she doesn't want to sleep in her room anymore. When they asked her why, she didn't want to speak. She then slept with them in another room that night. On the 4th night, she comes back at 1 a.m. crying again, but this time, she seemed petrified. She was shivering, begging not to sleep in her bedroom. One of the sisters gets up and walks towards her room. She bends over to get a peek, while the 2 other sisters were staring at her from behind. This sister got paralyzed from waist up. She wanted to scream for help, but she was not able to move a muscle. And her sisters behind her didn't know that she was struggling. She was frozen in her spot. She fell down a few seconds later and she runs to wake up her parents. She was shouting intensely, explaining what just happened. The father gets up and gently goes inside that bedroom as if someone in there was calling him. He goes in and shockingly closes the door behind him. It was a terrifying moment of silence as the whole family waited for the father outside that door. A minute felt like an hour. He comes out with an agitated face and says, "All of you should leave this house now." The mother knew exactly what her husband was going through. She acted normal. She took her daughters and left the house. Never try fixing a situation like this if you're angry. This is the latest update. The father is fine. The daughters are okay. The whole family is safe and happy in a new home. But just to show you how haunted this house is, in 2018, the landlord decided to demolish and rebuild this house. They were 2 weeks behind schedule because 13 deconstructing equipment were damaged during the process.